On the subject of merit pay, which is a big part of Race to the Top as well as Waiting for Superman, the most important study of merit pay ever done came out just a few weeks ago. It's the most rigorous scientific experimental study ever done. It was done at Vanderbilt University by the National Center for Performance Incentives. And there have been many studies of merit pay. Merit pay never makes a difference, but they keep studying it again and again to see maybe someday they'll find that it made a difference. They've been trying this since the 1920s, you should know. But in the Vanderbilt thing, they said, you know, the problem with merit pay studies in the past was they never offered teachers enough money. They would only offer them maybe $3,000 or $4,000. That wasn't enough incentive to get them to change their lazy behavior. So in the Vanderbilt study, they offered a bonus of $15,000. Now, you know, the teachers in Nashville, which is where the study was conducted, they don't have big salaries. $15,000 is a lot of money. And they watched the teachers in the control group and in the treatment group for 3 years, and at the end of it, they reported, and this was just a month ago, that both groups got exactly the same results. Why did they both get the same results? Because all of the teachers were working as hard as they knew how. That's it. Now, the day that this was released, the advocates of merit pay said, oh, that wasn't a very good study because we never expected that merit pay was going to raise test scores. Ha, ha, ha. Of course they did. They moved the goalpost. And the very next day after this study was released, the U.S. Department of Education released hundreds of millions of dollars for merit pay plans because they don't care about research. They have their program, and they're sticking to it. Now, what's wrong with merit pay? I'll go to one of the business gurus. His name is Edwards Deming. He doesn't write about schools, he writes about business. He's totally opposed to merit pay or performance pay because he says it encourages rivalry and competition among colleagues, it discourages teamwork, and it discourages collaboration. And any company that has merit pay is going to destroy that corporate culture. It encourages short-term planning, it discourages long-term planning, and it's poison to the culture of a school as it would be to a corporation. So then we move on to how are we going to identify all these bad teachers that are supposed to be fired? And the newest vogue, which the Department of Education is very excited about, is value-added assessment. I hope that you haven't agreed to do that. I fear you have. Testing experts across the country agree that this is such an inaccurate measure that it should be used only as part of multiple measures. The problem is it's numbers, and the numbers tend to drive out all the other measures. It's very inaccurate. Using value-added assessment, there will be teachers identified as effective who are not effective, and there will be very effective teachers identified as ineffective. And frankly, the most disgusting thing that's happened in this past horrible year is that the Los Angeles Times released a database of 6,000 teachers and their scores. And it was degrading, it was humiliating. No one felt good about this except for the reporters for the LA Times and Secretary Arne Duncan. He came out he hailed this and said it was wonderful, but every testing expert in the country said this was wrong, because it's only one part of the multiple measures, and we didn't know about the other measures. And you probably heard that there was a teacher in Los Angeles who, a month after the scores were released, committed suicide. And he was a 5th grade teacher at a tough elementary school called Miramonte. It was a gang neighborhood, and he was the teacher who was known among his colleagues as the one who reached out to the toughest kids. But he was rated by the LA Times as a less effective teacher. And his family said he took that to heart. You know, who knows, we'll never know why he committed suicide. He didn't leave a note. But after he died, the deputy superintendent of schools went to his school, and he read his personnel file, and he said he could tell the press that his principal had said he was one of the most outstanding teachers in the building. But that part didn't get into the LA Times. And now the New York City Department of Education is in litigation trying to release a database of 12,000 teachers and their ratings. So this is going to just spread across the country, and it's terrible. It's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. This is an inaccurate measure. There's a professor, an economist at Rutgers University, who said this about value-added assessment. He said, supposing I went to a car dealer, and I said, I like this car, I want to buy it. And the dealer said, great idea. I promise you, though, 1 out of every 5 times you turn the key, it's going to explode. That's value-added assessment. And Bruce Baker, the economist, said, I think I'd rather walk than buy that car. So let's walk. Let's depend on human judgment and not have these published measures that humiliate people. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a manifesto in the Washington Post. It was called How to Fix the Schools by Joel Klein, Michelle Rhee, and 14 superintendents. And the bottom line was, we need the power to hire and fire teachers at will. We don't need seniority, we don't need tenure. We just need to be able to hire and fire whoever we want. And they said this is because the teacher is the only one that affects student performance. Nothing else affects student performance except the teacher. Well, that's wrong. You know it's wrong, don't you? How about the students? Do they have something to do with their performance? How about their work, their willingness to do their homework, their willingness to show up every day? Doesn't that matter? And actually, when you look at the literature, which I don't think that the people who signed this manifesto looked at, teachers account for about 10 to 15% of the variation in test scores. And the biggest contributor to the variation in test scores is family and home and student effects. And the most important impact on student performance is income, because that affects whether children have good health care, whether they have nutrition, whether they come to school ready to learn, whether they come to school every day, whether they're faced with social and emotional crises at home, whether they have a home where there are books and newspapers and college educated. All those things matter. They affect student performance. But these days, if you dare to say that, they say, oh, you're putting kids down. It's not true. It's just a fact of life. And this is another reason why, given the tremendous importance of the home, parents must be your partners. Work closely with them. Now, let me just give you an example of where this voucher and choice and charter approach has been tried now. The laboratory of experimentation and innovation is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee has had vouchers since 1990, longer than any other place in the U.S. Only 3 cities have vouchers: Milwaukee, Washington, D.C., and Cleveland. Milwaukee has had them since 1990. Once the courts cleared the way in 1998, the voucher program really took off. They now have 20,000 kids with vouchers, about 18,000 kids in charters, and 82,000 kids in a shrinking public school system. And this year, for the first time, we learned how the Milwaukee schools are doing. And it turns out, not only does research show that the voucher students are not making greater progress than the regular public schools, but that the children, the black children in the Milwaukee public schools, for whom all this is supposedly benefiting them, that these children have test scores on the NAEP below those of children in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, which means that 20 years have been spent by the conservative foundations promoting solutions that didn't solve the problems of these kids. We need to build a great education profession, because that's what successful countries do. What we need in this country are experienced teachers and stable teaching staffs, not constant turmoil and turnover in our schools. We need principals who are themselves master teachers. We need principals who can go into the classroom and say, that's a great lesson, because they know what a great lesson looks like. Or who can go into a classroom and say, let me help you. I was on a panel yesterday in New Orleans with the president of the Schott Foundation, and he said he had come back from visits in Finland and visits in Asia, and he asked the people there in the education ministry, what do you do when a teacher is a bad teacher? They said, we help them. And he said, well, what if you help them and they don't improve? He said, we give them more help. And then at some point, when it doesn't work, They may decide to leave, but we're not going to give up on them. If they want to be a teacher and they are willing to work at it, we will help them. Here we say, you're out of here. Now, here's a scary thought. The George W. Bush Institute in Texas announced that it's planning to train 50,000 new principals, and that they will be drawn in large part from the fields of industry, the military, and sports. They're coming your way. Now, here's another radical idea. We need superintendents who are educators. And not superintendents who are using a platform to make themselves into media stars. We need a strong curriculum in every school for every child, not just testing. And if Arne Duncan gets another $5 billion, I would encourage him to put it into art and music and science and history and foreign languages. And if we really want to move up and be among the high-performing nations in the world, we should put an end to high-stakes testing. So I urge you, let's try, let's struggle, let's turn this thing around. Let's stand together and support public education. Let's build support among parents and community members and your elected officials. Invite them into your schools. Let them walk in your shoes. Let them see how hard you work. Help them understand the importance of professionalism. Use the research that shows that privatization is not more effective, that it threatens one of the most important institutions of our democracy, that it benefits the privatizers, and that it will leave most children behind. Thank goodness we didn't privatize Social Security before 2008. You are not powerless. As individuals, you have only one voice and only one vote. But together, you can change this dismal situation and reclaim public and communal responsibility for our children. Margaret Mead wrote long ago, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Thank you so much.